Welcome to the ISO for Growth, the podcast where we strip away the jargon and help small business owners build better, stronger, and more scalable companies through the power of ISO standards. Let's get started. Welcome to our ISO for Growth podcast.
Hello.
How are you today?
I'm all right, thank you, Jenny. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, thank you, Laurence, for giving up your time to come and have hopefully a nice conversation. We can educate our listeners, which will be really good. We're going to focus today on ISO 9001. And for our listeners, why don't you just start off by introducing yourself? We know you call Laurence, obviously.
Well, that's a good start.
Yeah.
So I've been with the business as a business consultant for 12, 13 months now. It's gone quick. If you want any of my background, I've done various jobs over the years. I've got a background in financial services, so I'm a fan of processes, come from a background where regulation's very important. Yeah. But at the same time, I'd like to think I'm creative. So things like ISO can be very dry. Yeah. They can seem very intimidating, but they don't have to be.
They don't have to be, you're quite right.
And so that's why I really love this job, is that we're able to see these things sort of as puzzles, help clients understand what's actually being asked, and then coming up with a solution that works for them. So that's my take on it.
I like that.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, so I guess you'll have lots of analogies along the way throughout our discussion.
I wasn't going to keep it secret.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I like a quote and I like an illustration, so I've actively sought them out. So with some of the stuff we'll discuss, I hope I can share some. So
I'm so excited.
Well, I might have set myself up to fall, but we'll see what we do.
I'm sure you would. So, as I said, we're going to focus on ISO 9001. We know it's a quality management system, and it focuses on customer satisfaction, which is the heart of most management systems out there. And, over a series of these podcasts, we're going to break down 9001. So today we're going to start looking at clauses 4 and 5. So that's the very start. Some of our listeners might think, well, why start with 4? But anyhow, that's where we won't bother them with why we start at 4, but that's where the management system really does start at clause 4. So, clause 4, it asks a business to look at the context of the organisation. And I honestly remember when this standard came out, and they mentioned the context of the organisation, I was like, oh my God, what on earth? As a consultant myself, even I was going, oh my God, what on earth are they talking about? Yeah. And yet we expect our clients to, have some understanding. So, our job is to really explain what that is, and what the client should be looking for if they're doing this piece of work themselves, So to anyone hearing this for the first time, like I said, it can sound really confusing. Can you explain what the standard means by the context of the organisation in layman's terms?
Well, I was thinking, can I start with a quote, Jenny?
Oh, of course you can.
But let's get philosophical straight away. Yeah. So it's from Aristotle. He said, the first step in wisdom is to know yourself. Now, why am I saying that? Because we can't really do anything else unless we understand ourselves internally. And with a business, it's no different, because we need to understand what's going on internally within my business. What's the context? What's happening? How many employees are there? How are they feeling? What are they doing? And that's just internally. What about externally? What about the market that you operate in? What type of clients do you have? What challenges do you face? There's a whole host of things that make up what your business is doing, how it operates. And there's not one size fits all to that. But I think just a really concise quote like that helps us to think about. It's just reflecting on where you're at, what you're doing, what things impact on you. And that's just a holistic, high-level way of explaining that question, I suppose. That's how I see it.
I love that. I love that. I wish I had adopted that style when
Be philosophical about it. Yeah. And of course, you do have to be explicit and look at specific issues. But if you take it from that point of view and do a bit of chin stroking and think, well, where are we at? What are we doing? Why do we do that? And it leads to some really good conversations. And that's why, again, saying about why I enjoy the job is you work with so many different businesses. Every business is different. The challenges they face are different. Some of the positives they face are different. And it's really interesting hearing that, because that informs the context. I think a big part of context And the part that's quite scary, I guess, is legislation and laws and legal requirements, because of course we all operate in environments where the law says what we can and can't do. So that is absolutely something that is part of our context. And it's something that we use as a tool to help identify context. And every business has different ways of doing it. If people like acronym, pestle analysis. We love a pestle. So we look at the political, economic, social, technological, environmental, and legislative changes that might be happening. Some businesses go for a SWOT analysis. The strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threat, whatever the acronym, they're all doing the same thing, helping businesses to understand internal and external things that are affecting them.
It's quite interesting that, because, if we went in with it, I guess the approach of, so tell me about the context of the organisation, that, just saying those words and not really understanding what that really means. Clients will just shut down and just like, oh, I have no idea what you're talking about. But actually explaining it from how you've explained it, about really understanding where you are. Yeah. And even right down to if we said something along the lines of, well, tell me what your internal, external issues are. I'll be like,
what does that mean?
Yeah, what does that mean? Yes. And we're trying to remove that what does that mean by explaining it in an excellent way that you have done.
And guide the conversation so that a client, anybody who's looking at setting up a management system, they're the experts. The business owner knows what they're facing. They don't need me to tell them. And it's just asking questions to draw them out. And it's amazing what businesses and what business owners and managers and directors can come up with. And one director might say something to another director. It's really, really interesting.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yes, it is. And it's kind of like the light bulb moment when they really get it.
Yeah.
And actually, you're quite right. They have that information in their head already.
Exactly.
And it's just, for our job is to coax it out of them in a really,
100%.
Yeah, in a way that it just becomes a natural conversation.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So in terms of the context then, so what sort of elements make up the context of the organisation then?
So obviously each of the clauses under clause 4, they address perhaps a different perspective of it. So clause 4.1 looks at that as an internal, external issue, some of the stuff we discussed. It can take it further into other areas such as interested parties. So that is looking a little bit deeper dive into it. So what are the people or the organizations or the other institutions that are affecting your business? So that could be your clients, it could be your employees, it could be your neighbors, but every business is different. So the list is not one size fits all. We work with some clients who might have their own customers that have very specific requirements, and really what they say directly impacts the way an organization acts and adjusts. Other businesses who still have customers may have a wide range of hundreds of small customers. The way they respond to their customers is going to be different to somebody with one huge customer. So every interested party is going to have slightly different requirements. Yeah. And it's up to us just at the beginning, again, about context, understanding a business to say, okay, so that's relevant. Why is it relevant? And how does that work for you? We don't have to, make it scary. If you go online, you'll find context registers with about 100 different interested parties. There'll be breakdowns of every shareholder and every director. And that's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to keep it strategic and say, let's just have an overview. Let's do a bit of chin stroking. I don't like that phrase. And just go, who is it in the business that we need to document is really important to you, that will affect the way the rest of the system works.
And that's one of the key points of the interested parties. Their vested interest in you. You want to ensure that you're delivering the service to meet their needs and their expectations, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I guess one of the things we would probably ask is something along the lines of, so your employees are interested parties. They want to make sure that your business stays operational because of a number of reasons. And then, we'd ask the question around something similar like, well, what are their needs and their expectations from you as a business owner?
Yeah, of course. And when it comes to quality, because you may have interested parties for other management systems that have different requirements, but when it comes to quality, there's lots of different metrics you could use. They might want to have financial things that are really important to them. It could be directly about delivery times. It could be about the speed you respond to a question. Again, depends who your customers are. But it's up to us to work together and figure out that's what's important to them. So that's important to us. So that should be kind of our approach. And the clients are the easy example, but it could equally be our employees. Employees may have different needs and requirements. You know, a regulator has different requirements depending on what industry you're in. So again, you could spend hours looking at it, and we should, because it's important. But at the same time, we've got to keep it reasonable. That's the point. We've got to make sure that it works for the business and the size of that business and relevant to what their context is.
And that's so important. I'm really pleased that you said that, because it has to be relevant to that business. You know, we don't operate in a tip box. We'll just throw you 150 interested parties and there you go, and it has no relevance to it. And that's really a really important word, isn't it? It's got to be relevant.
Exactly. And I guess we were talking about, again, what makes up the context, the different components. You stepped forward with the standard, and it asks about scope. Yeah. So you can look at scope as kind of the lines on you like paddle, Jenny, don't you?
I love paddle. Shall we talk about paddle instead of ISO?
Let's make it a paddle podcast. Whatever your sport, tennis, badminton, football, you've got to know the rules of the game. Yeah. So you have a court, you have a pitch, and it's all marked out. Yeah. And it's the same with the management system. If you don't mark out the boundaries, if you don't say, here's where we can do or look at things, and that might be geographic, might be what buildings are involved, what people are, what services are involved, where you operate. They're all things that help us to say, here's the boundaries. This is what our management system looks at. And that's really helpful, because if you don't do that, I don't know the rules of the game. What am I playing here? It's really confusing.
That's true. That's such a great, I like the way that you're explaining this.
I told you I'd have some for you.
Well, I'm so impressed. I really am. I wish you were here to train me when I was back in the day. But no, that's a really great way of explaining it.
Yeah.
You know, the rules of the game. Yeah. You know, what do you do in a nutshell? How do you operate? How do you deliver your services? What is your service, and how do you deliver it?
Exactly. And that is informed by all the different things, different legislation, what service you're offering. And just because your service might be very similar to the next business along who apparently does the same thing, doesn't necessarily mean your scope's the same. You may have a very different setup to them. People work remotely increasingly now, so maybe there's not even a building involved. So where do you draw the line, and where do you put that? So it's all really important. And that leads to the last part of the clauses, which is about processes. Yeah. And that's still part of our context, because every business could seemingly do the same thing. We all do deliveries, or we all make product X, but that doesn't mean the way you get to that is the same. Some will work really well, some maybe not so much. A nice illustration I read online was about, it's like a recipe. Mm-hmm. You like baking, Jenny? Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. We know each other well. You're like, I like cake, but more the eating. But when we're looking at processes of any business, it's finding that simple recipe and saying, if you do this and you follow that, you're going to get the same tasty cake at the end. And you can obviously improve on that recipe. You can keep making it better. But ultimately, if you make sure you define your process, get your recipe right, you can have that same output every single time. And that's really important. Again, if you understand why you're doing what you're doing, what's important to your business as opposed to the next one, that'll make it work for you. So that's a real key point of why we're having these discussions about what legislation is relevant. And they're nice to have, but make sure they inform the following parts of that clause 4 in the standards. I could listen to you all day talking about the context of the organisation, especially your analogies, the way that you put them together. But yes, I really like that. Yeah, I probably stolen all the questions you're about to ask, so I apologise.
No, don't be silly.
If at least we're getting
there. No, we're getting there. So I guess we can summarise the context of the organisation is around, understanding you as a business, not you individually, but understanding your business, isn't it? So we're looking at the internal and external issues that potentially will impact on the operations of the business with quality, because we're talking about the quality management system today. So with quality being the focus of everything, we're saying, understanding your interested parties, what are their needs and their expectations from you, the provider. We're then looking at legislation as well. We're looking at the scope of the business. So, what do you do in a nutshell, I guess. And then we're looking at what else have I missed in there? We're looking at the actual operation. So yes, you're quite right. A business could broadly say, well, I get an inquiry, I make or deliver that service, and then I invoice. But then it's all those intricate little details along the way to ensure that the end result is spot on, and so that we're not getting silly mistakes, I guess. Yeah, so you can repeat that process over and over again and get that super service or super product.
Exactly. We've all had a chocolate cake, but they don't all taste the same.
No, they don't. Not like mine.
Well, that's also true. So when it comes to businesses, the processes that they follow, some might be very simple because they're a small business and that works for them. But for a huge organization, a multinational, would that work? Probably not.
Exactly, with lots of people inputted into it.
And you flip it reverse. If you're part of a large organization and you need those detailed, long processes, that work, but it won't work for a small business where there's 2 people working in it. You're just going to swamp them with so much admin and it's going to be too complicated.
It's going to be, that's true.
So that's why the context informs the size of the system and how it works. That's maybe a lot of the anxiety that our clients and people looking at ISOs face is, well, if I take this on board, I'm going to have to do this, and this. And we're just trying to explain, not necessarily. Depends what your business does. So, and that's where all of our conversations with them come from.
Yeah, that's very true. And yeah, you're quite right. We're not here to bombard our clients with reams of new processes and
just for the sake of it.
For the sake of it, that's not what we're about. And a management system shouldn't be like that at all. If you have one in place and you just feel overwhelmed by it, then you really need to be stripping it back and really looking at what are you, what have you got in place that's not necessary, and don't make it, because it shouldn't be overwhelming. It should complement your business to allow you to really refine particular areas in it, quality in this instance.
Exactly, and that's because the standards are designed, and all of them, whichever standard you do. But 9001 obviously is about quality, about continual improvement. You can't continually improve something if it's a millstone around your neck. So there's something not working if it's too much for you, or if you're maybe finding that, my friend said do this, this, and this, and you're thinking, yeah, but I can't. I haven't got enough of me's to do it. Well, maybe there's a different solution that would work. That's still in line with what the requirement of the standard, but it works for your business, and that's something that ISO's evolved over the years. Maybe one client recently said, I did ISO 20 years ago, and he looked a bit terrible. And I said, you probably find it's changed a lot. And some of the consultants and people who've worked with it have almost PTSD from how it used to be. But it's been deliberately adapted so that it works for small businesses, and that's positive because it helps small businesses to continually improve. Use it as an engine. I think you've used the phrase to just keep progressing and moving
progressing
forward.
Yes, and also not have the thought whereby it's just for the large corporate businesses. It's great that now it has been adapted actually to suit even a one-man band would be ideal for it, right up to the corporate world.
Yeah, that's it. And you get out of any management system, you get out of it what you put in. So if you make it confusing and complicated what you put in, probably that's what's going to come out. But if you keep it really focused and why you're doing what you're doing, which is the point, you're going to get good results out of it. And that's why it's the foundation of the system. If you get the scope wrong, if you don't think about those things, if you haven't done all of those things, it's not going to make sense later on. You go, well, why is that happening? Why is that? And that's why it's important.
Yeah. No, I like that. So that's clause 4, the very start of your management system. There's a lot in there that we've unpicked, I should say. So we're going to now move on to clause 5. So just for our listeners, it's clause 4 to 10. But obviously, just for today, we're just going to look at clause 4 and 5, and then in another episode,
we don't want to overwhelm anyone.
We don't want to overwhelm. Yes,
we've probably already done that, but we don't want to do it more.
We don't want to overwhelm. You're quite right. So clause 5 talks about leadership and commitments, and I do remember back in the day, I probably showing my age now, but back in the day, when anyone worked with an ISO system, the management team would be in their ivory towers and they wouldn't get involved with anything. And it'd just be a case of, Laurence, the certification body's coming in, just, get on with it and let me know what happens. But that's changed, and that's a positive reason why it's changed, isn't it? Because now we want leadership. The title says leadership and commitment in the title there. So, so like I said, it has clearly evolved over time for the better in my opinion, anyhow. And so when you're working with a client, typically you are talking to the management, the senior management, sometimes the owner or somebody of a director level. How do we get them to really demonstrate their leadership and commitment around the involvement in the ISO system?
Yeah, it's a funny one in that how do you measure leadership? It's not a figure. You're a 5 and you're a 6, you're a 7. But there's obviously things that leaders can do that either show that commitment, which is why, like you said, the standards included that phrase, and show kind of that involvement, not sat in an ivory tower, like you say. And there's definitely that focus here to discourage and put that aside. Because a management system is only as good as the leader that is leading it. It's very easy for a management system to become siloed, partitioned, and it's sort of, well, we do this over here, and that's your management system over there, which is it's not how it should be. It's obviously completely broken. It's not doing what the standard needs it to. So really, what we're asking here and what the standard is wanting is for leaders just to be involved. And it's not asking for grand, complex gestures, investments where, your leaders are already busy. They're running a business. They're not having to go and do everything themselves. That's why they've got a team around them that can help and support. But they're maybe setting the objectives. Where are we going? Why are we doing this? How soon do we need to get there? Oh, do we need some more support there? Okay, we can do that. And I think helping leaders to realize that it's not rocket science. Of course, being a leader is, and there's me saying it to you, Jenny, but being a leader is about those simple, small things to help your employees, support them to do quality work. We're talking, that's what this system's for. And probably, if businesses are really honest with themselves, they might already be doing some of that. So it's not saying, stop whatever you're doing, I'm going to teach you how to be a leader. Leadership's probably already there and it's doing a good job, because it wouldn't be a good business if they weren't. But of course, there's simple steps that people can do to sort of reinforce that. I wrote some of them down. Walk the talk, be visibly engaged. A one that the standard does ask is about promoting customer focus. So I know the old adage of the customer is always right. Not necessarily true, but the principle's there, isn't it? The customer is telling you what they need. Is the leadership listening and saying, I get it. Here's how I'm going to show that. Obviously, it's supporting with resources, like we said. And communication is a massive one.
Oh, it is a huge one, that.
I'm sure we've all been in employment where we just don't get told what to do and we're going, I don't know what they want. And
then getting told off when you've done it wrong.
Exactly. And that's just, it's upsetting, it's infuriating, it's stressful. And you can see how that lack of communication just directly filters down. So for a small business, a large business, it's still the same thing. If there's two of you, make sure you communicate. And leaders that communicate, they get a lot further on. And that's clause 5 again is looking not just at leadership as an abstract concept. It's trying to drill it down to how can you communicate better. And a couple of the other clauses that follow look into that a little bit more.
No, I like that. Yes, I like that. That's really a really good point about the communication element of leadership. Because if you don't communicate to your team and direct them, because basically you're directing them, aren't your team. And what I like about the quality management system, and now that we have leadership and commitment involved, is that you are showing as a leader that actually you want the best. So you're showing your team that you want to deliver the best, and you want the best team to ensure that your clients get the best service. And bottom line, that's all it is, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, of course it is.
Yeah. I'm really pleased that it's the leadership element now has come out of the ivory tower. Because I never liked that concept of management, senior management just sitting back and allowing.
And it's an easy trap to fall into.
It is,
And we're glad that you walk amongst us, Jenny. You even bring us cake to our desk sometimes.
I do. I try my best.
You do. So it's not that is the secret to success. It helps.
It does help.
but all of those things where leadership engages with their team.
Yeah.
It's so simple. We think, well, why aren't leaders doing that? But like you say, it's easy for times past for people just to sit in their ivory tower. A good business now shouldn't and can't be.
It shouldn't, because being amongst your team, you have that, you get that buy-in because they can see your passion and drive, and they will come on that journey with you. So why wouldn't anybody want that? It's beyond me.
Well, I did write down another thing about us. We like running.
Yes. I'm not sure about like running.
Okay, we run.
That's
just a fact.
Yes.
Not very well, not very far, but we'd like to give it a go.
You're far better than I am, but
still not
take the credit.
To others. But anyway, you don't win a marathon in the first mile. Consistency beats intensity.
Oh.
So what a great one again about leadership. It's not about making these grand gestures, rolling out the MD once a year and saying, I'll give you a speech and then see you next year. Yeah. Just a little day-to-day thing. So I had to share that.
I like that, because overall your management system isn't something that you develop and then pop in a drawer until the certification body comes along 12 months later. Yeah. It's a living, breathing system that should be, so embedded into the business that it just becomes, it's like breathing, isn't it? It's just air around us. We just breathe, and that's what your management system should be like. A little bit
every day. Yeah. You speak to some of our external auditors that work with different businesses, and they'll have a dusty copy of a big binder and blow the dust off, and they get left in a room all day to look at it, and that's not helping anybody.
That's not helping. It's a pointless having it.
Exactly, and that's not what we're trying to help clients set up. We want them to have something that they can actively use and help them day to day.
Yeah. Excellent. So still on clause 5, we're coming towards the end of clause 5, the quality policy. Over the years, I've seen some really thick quality policy. So this is often a misunderstood policy in my opinion. I think when some people talk about policy, they envisage this great, big, huge document that just goes on and on forever, and someone reads it and they've no idea what it's about. The quality policy should be like a guide, an overarching guide of where you're.
Definitely. That's a great analogy, and I think the standard has some expectations about what your policy should have, but it certainly isn't. It must be 50 pages long. And it should be, saying things that you don't really believe. And it should really be concise. It's almost like your North Star for your business. And you can hold up that piece of paper effectively and say, here's what we're committed to. Here's what we're passionate about, what we follow. And like I say, there are some specific requirements that should be included in there, a commitment to continual improvement. There's some of those things, but ultimately, it needs to be what you as leadership, because we're still under leadership here, and it often gets detached from leadership. It sits under clause 5 for a reason, because leadership, they dictate that policy and they'll say, this is what we want the rest of the business to move towards. So it's really important that is done. And, it doesn't mean that, like I say, complicated. It doesn't have to be an A4 piece of paper. It's not a rule. But an A4 piece of paper is okay. And like we were discussing about communication, a quality policy is great. But again, if it goes in a drawer and no one sees it, that's no good. It's also, the standard, you can't do that. But the point of it is that if you communicate that policy, it helps everybody to be on the same page, work towards the same goals. And that's what the intent of this is. So, Make a good policy and it will help everybody.
It will help everyone. Yes, I like that. Okay. So the final section of clause 5 looks at roles and responsibilities. Do you think an organisational chart is sufficient to meet the requirements of the standard, or should it be something more?
I suspect this may have gone back to a conversation very recently, Jenny, when I thought about this. So the answer is no. That's my take on it. You may have some other consultants also say, yeah, but I think the reason for that is that if we imagine that organizational diagram and it's got Jenny and then it's got, some lines to each of, me and a few other people in the business, it's great. It tells you who's in that business and the structure of it, but there's no detail there. It might not even say a job title. Or it might say a job title, but no name. I think, well, I know that there's an MD. I don't know who it is. There's always a kind of the ability to look at it and just think, yeah, right, that shows who's doing what, and put it aside. But it needs to be clear. So I think what we really aim to do and support that diagram, which is useful, is to have roles and responsibilities clearly defined. And a management system is made up of lots of components. We've looked at leadership here, talked about context, but there's obviously so many other aspects to it. So in a small business of one or two people, you may well know who's doing it because there's only one or two. But as businesses grow and there's different roles, does everybody know what they're doing? So does somebody know that they're responsible for dealing with customer complaints or obtaining customer satisfaction, or who's dealing with the infrastructure of the building, who's dealing with the facilities side? Every business has roles, but we may have to do everything just by the sake of a small business, but probably there's people that are doing stuff and we assume they know. Well, why didn't you know that? Well, that's where if you can clearly define it, and it could be as simple as a set of roles, the person who's doing it, and saying that's a leadership role and that's a support role, and that's fine. I've in the past seen larger businesses go for a Raki matrix, which is more of a who's responsible, who's accountable, who's consulted, who's informed.
Oh wow!
Which is great, but again, if there's only two of you in a business, do you need to wonder? I need to inform myself of this. Probably not. But those tools all do the same thing: is that they help people see what they need to do and how, what level of action can they take, and it's just they don't have to be complicated. We can have conversations. You can tell me, could you do X, Y, and Z? That's fine if it's just me and you. But if there's more, it just needs to be explicit.
I like that. Well, I guess that's the end of clause 4 and 5. I think we've covered that, and hopefully it's been clear to our listeners. It's certainly clear to me and you anyhow, isn't it? But hopefully it's clear to our listeners that it's not that daunting. It's about understanding who you are and getting your leaders involved in the management system.
Definitely. And I think I'll close with another quote. I don't have a reference for this one.
Oh,
okay. I think it's quite a famous one, but if everything's important, nothing is. So with any management system, we've got to look at it as a whole. And it can be overwhelming, but also just remember these components that we've been discussing, they're each individually important, but some may only take up one line of a management system. Some might need more detail, but try and take things individually, and it helps alleviate anxiety. And that's why we're there to work with people to alleviate anxiety. That's what I tell myself.
Love that.
Not deluging people with information and making them feel more confused, but that's what we try to do.
We're trying our very best, yes. Well, Laurence, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you covering clauses 4 and 5. It's been very, very helpful, and hopefully our listeners will have taken something from it. And I hope you'll come back and let's address some more of ISO 9001, looking at another couple of clauses in a little bit more detail.
I'll start thinking of some more illustrations.
Yeah, please do. Yes. Thank you again. And have a great day.
Okay, you too.
That's all from today's episode of ISO for Growth. Remember, ISO isn't designed to cause you stress. It's the foundation that allows you to grow your business. If you enjoyed today's episode, please hit the follow button. I'll be forever grateful. I'm Jenny Kilburn, and I'll see you next week.